The notification popped up on my laptop just as I was wrapping up a work report. It was from Rebecca. She tagged me in an Instagram post that immediately made me pause. There she was, sitting cross-legged on our backyard patio in this flowing, bohemian-style dress that looked like it had been plucked from a vintage shop in Brighton. Crystals dangled from delicate chains around her neck, catching the sunlight. Her feet were bare, toes painted a bold crimson, and her fingers played with a cluster of bracelets stacked high on her wrist. The caption read, "Breaking free from the chains we mistake for love. Marriage is just modern bondage disguised as partnership. Today I choose liberation. Hashtag authentic living, hashtag breaking free, hashtag no more chains." I stared at the screen for a good 30 seconds. Years of marriage boiled down to a public social media declaration with hashtags, no less. No conversation, no warning, just a billboard announcing that apparently I was her jailer. Comments were already flooding in. Her new authenticity coach, some woman named Miranda Sterling, had replied with 3 raised fist emojis and a "Yes, Queen." A handful of women I'd never met were chiming in, praising her bravery and awakening. I closed the laptop and stepped outside. Rebecca was still perched on the patio chair, phone in hand, probably filming another story about her liberation journey. I tried to keep my voice casual. "Interesting post," I said. She looked up, startled, but not embarrassed. More like pleased, like she was proud I saw it. "I'm done pretending, David," she said, voice steady, eyes bright with something fierce. "I've been living in bondage, and I finally have the courage to say it." "Bondage," I echoed, letting the word hang between us. "That's what you'd call our marriage," she said, setting her phone down with the confidence of someone who just cracked a profound truth wide open. "Marriage is just bondage with a wedding ring." She went on, explaining how this coach, Miranda Sterling, had helped her see the expectations, the constraints, how society pushes women to sacrifice their true selves to keep men comfortable. It was all just bondage. I settled into the chair opposite her, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Tell me more about this bondage. I want to understand what you're feeling." Her eyes lit up, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Someone willing to listen, not fight. "It's everything, David. Every time I put your feelings before mine, that's bondage. Every time I rearrange my day around yours, that's bondage. Every bit of emotional work I do to keep this house running, that's bondage. I'm trapped in a system that keeps me small, so you can be comfortable." "That sounds awful," I said carefully. "No one should feel trapped in their own life." She blinked, expecting resistance but getting none. "Exactly. That's why I'm choosing to free myself." "What does that look like?" She launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. Complete autonomy over her time and energy, freedom from the expectations of wives, permission to put her authentic self first, without guilt. "I need space to figure out who I really am," she finished. "Not who marriage made me." I nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty. If you feel trapped, we need to fix that." Relief washed over her face. "You understand?" "I understand you feel constrained," I said. "And I understand that keeping you trapped would make me a terrible person." I stood up. "Give me some time to think about how we can give you the freedom you want." She looked almost confused. She'd expected drama, resistance, maybe even begging. Instead, I was giving her exactly what she asked for. That evening, she disappeared into the home office for her weekly video session with Miranda Sterling. Through the door, I could hear excited chatter about breakthroughs and choosing oneself. I sat at my laptop, but not to research authenticity or coaching. I was digging into legal separation, financial independence, and the real costs of running a household solo. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was my sister, Kate. "Did you see Rebecca's Instagram?" she asked without preamble. "I did. Are you okay?" "Honestly, I'm thinking about helping her get the freedom she wants." There was a pause. "David, what does that mean?" "It means if she really believes marriage is bondage, the kindest thing I can do is set her free." Kate laughed nervously. "You sound way too calm." "I am calm," I said. "I'm going to give her exactly what she's asking for. We'll see what she learns." Either you save your marriage or end it spectacularly. Either way, we'll know what she truly wants. Rebecca emerged from her session glowing with empowerment. I had a plan. Saturday morning was coming, and so was the real test. Saturday morning came, and while Rebecca luxuriated in her newfound authentic rhythm of sleeping in, I was up at 6 sharp, just like always. But today, there'd be no tiptoeing around her delicate awakening. The coffee grinder roared to life like an angry espresso machine, and the morning news blared from the kitchen speakers at full volume. If we were truly living as two independent souls, there was no need to tiptoe around anyone else's schedule. Around 10 o'clock, Rebecca finally shuffled downstairs, hair tousled like she'd lost a fight with a pillow, wearing those loose linen trousers and a vintage tank top that showed off her toned arms. Arms that had never once lifted a vacuum in our shared home, but now seemed ready to take on the world. Her feet were bare again, and the faint scent of lavender from the crystals she wore lingered in the air. "Do you have to be that loud?" she asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes, clearly annoyed. I smiled, pouring myself a cup of coffee. I wasn't aware I had to modify my authentic self to accommodate your comfort. "Isn't that bondage?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She was trying to figure out if I was mocking her or agreeing. I walked over and placed a neat folder on the kitchen counter. "I spent some time thinking about your liberation. I want to make sure you get exactly what you need." Rebecca eyed the folder suspiciously. "What's this?" "Your freedom framework," I said, trying not to sound like a corporate consultant. "A comprehensive plan to eliminate every element of bondage from your life." She flipped open the folder. Inside were spreadsheets, charts, and financial breakdowns meticulously calculated. I'd spent hours drafting budgets, separate living arrangements, and detailed projections of what life would look like under her authentic independence. "According to your post and our chat, you feel trapped by the expectations and responsibilities of marriage," I said. "This framework removes all those constraints." Her eyes darted across the pages, the stark reality sinking in. "Wait. This says I'd be paying £900 a month just for housing." "That's right," I said. "Financial independence means managing your own expenses. I calculated your share based on room size, utilities, market rates, all the fun stuff. But we're married. We share expenses. We did when you were in bondage. But bonded people depend on each other to support their lifestyle. Free people are self-sufficient. You can't have it both ways." She flipped through more pages, her face shifting from curiosity to confusion, to alarm. "This says we'd have separate social lives, separate living spaces, separate everything." "Exactly. Complete autonomy, just like you asked. No more coordinating events, no more managing schedules together. You get to live authentically without considering anyone else's needs or preferences." I took another sip of coffee as she read, her skin paling with every section. "David, I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said finally. "When I said I wanted freedom, you meant you want the benefits of marriage without the responsibilities. You want someone to pay your bills and provide emotional support while you explore your authentic self without obligation." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds less like freedom and more like having your cake and eating it too. That's not fair." "What's not fair is calling your husband a slave master on social media and expecting him to keep footing the bill like nothing happened." I rinsed my coffee cup, setting it down with a quiet finality. "The framework starts Monday. You have the weekend to decide if you want to experience authentic freedom here or somewhere else." She stared at me, disbelief flooding her features. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm serious," I said, grabbing my gym bag. "You declared marriage is bondage. I'm giving you liberation. Why would I keep you trapped?" I headed to the door. "I'll be out for a few hours. Take your time reviewing the documents. Let me know if you have questions about your new autonomous lifestyle." As I stepped outside, I heard her hurriedly dialing her phone, probably Dr. Sterling, looking for some loophole to get freedom without paying the price. The game had begun, and unlike Rebecca, I actually understood the rules. Monday morning arrived with an unforgiving clarity. I'd already moved my things back into the master bedroom over the weekend, reclaiming the space I'd always considered ours. When Rebecca came downstairs, she found her belongings neatly stacked outside the guest room, the designated space for her independent living. She stood there, arms crossed, staring at the boxes as if willing them to vanish. Her loose blouse slipped off one shoulder, revealing a delicate collarbone that was usually hidden beneath layers of comfort. Her fitted jeans hugged her hips, and the silver anklet she wore caught the morning light. Even in this tense moment, there was an unspoken allure in her quiet defiance. "What is this?" she asked, voice tight. "Your independent living space," I said calmly. "The guest room and the hall bathroom are yours. I've allocated the master suite to myself since I'm covering the primary mortgage." She shook her head, disbelief flickering across her face. "This is insane, David." "What's insane?" I countered. "Bonded people share primary spaces. Free people maintain their own territories. You wanted autonomy. This is what it looks like." Her gaze dropped to the floor. "I have a coaching session with Dr. Sterling this morning. We'll figure this out." I gave her a small nod. "Of course. Though you might want to review the financial section before that call." I added, "Her coaching fees are now coming out of your personal budget, not our shared account." Her face went ghostly white. "How much do her sessions cost?" "You've been paying £200 a week for the past 3 months. I was covering it from our household account, but that was when you were in bondage. Free people pay for their own coaching." She looked like she was doing mental gymnastics, trying to balance her modest income from part-time wellness consulting against rent, utilities, coaching fees, and basic living expenses. The math wasn't kind. "I can't afford that," she whispered. "Then you might need to make some authentic choices about your priorities," I said, already heading for the door. "I'm off to work. Your first rent payment is due Friday. Let me know if you need help setting up a PayPal or whatever." As I left, I heard her frantically calling someone, probably Dr. Sterling, looking for advice on how to get freedom without the financial hangover. Later that evening, I came home to find her in full-blown panic mode. The living room was a mess of papers, bills, and coaching brochures. She sat on the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks, clutching her phone. "She won't even talk to me unless I pay," Rebecca said, voice raw. 3 months of telling me she believed in my journey, and the second the money stops, she ghosts me. I nodded, trying to hide my mixture of sympathy and quiet satisfaction. "That's unfortunate," I said, "and I mean that, not because I want you back in coaching, but because you need to see the truth about what you bought into." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "I thought she actually cared about helping women. She cares about helping herself. You were paying her nearly $1,000 a month to tell you your problems were someone else's fault. That's a pretty solid business model." She looked crushed. "I'm so stupid." "You're not stupid. You're human. Someone told you what you wanted to hear, and you believed them." Meanwhile, I was rediscovering myself without the constant noise of criticism and revolutionary theory. I felt lighter than I had in months. I started having lunch with colleagues instead of eating at my desk. Signed up for a woodworking class I'd been eyeing. Even went out for drinks with my brother Mark, who listened with growing amusement. "You actually did it," he said, shaking his head. "You gave her exactly what she asked for. Why wouldn't you? Because if she really believes marriage is bondage, staying in it would be wrong for both of us." But she didn't mean it literally, right? She seemed pretty literal when she posted it. And when she spent every day for weeks complaining about her oppression, I sipped my beer. Mark laughed. "So what's the alternative? Beg her to stay in bondage? Convince her her feelings are wrong? That just proves her point." He shook his head. "You're either brilliant or diabolical." I smiled. "Just logical. She wanted freedom. I'm giving it to her. If she doesn't like it, that's information about what she actually wanted." Friday came, and with it, the first real test of Rebecca's commitment to authentic freedom. When I came home from work, she was at the kitchen table, hunched over a checkbook like a student cramming for a final. The coffee maker I'd bought myself sat on the counter, no more 2-cup mornings. My meal prep containers lined the fridge, each labeled with my name. The house was slowly becoming a space for one, and she was watching it happen in real time. "I have your payment," she said quietly, sliding a check across the table. I picked it up. £600, covering half of October's expenses prorated from Monday. "Thank you. How did you manage it?" I picked up 3 new clients, borrowed some money from my sister, and canceled everything that wasn't essential. "That's resourceful," I said. "Unsustainable, but resourceful." She looked up, tears threatening. "I can't keep this up, David. I'm working constantly, stopped seeing friends, canceled my gym membership, eating ramen for dinner. This isn't freedom. This is poverty." "No," I said. "This is independence. Poverty is having no options. You have options, you're just discovering that all of them require effort." She swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "Please, can we just talk about going back to normal?" I sat down, locking eyes. "Define normal. The normal where you called our marriage bondage. The normal where you publicly declared your need for liberation. Or some other normal where you get all the benefits without admitting you were wrong." She wiped her eyes. "I was wrong. I'm acknowledging it. I made a terrible mistake." "Okay, what were you wrong about?" "About marriage being bondage. About needing liberation. About all of it." "Why were you wrong?" She hesitated. Because marriage isn't bondage." "That's not an answer. That's you telling me what you think I want to hear." She took a breath. "Try again." "Because I took everything for granted. Didn't understand what you contributed. Let some coach convince me that support was oppression. Now we were getting somewhere. Because I wanted to blame you for my unhappiness instead of facing my own problems. It was easier to call myself oppressed than admit I was bored and unfulfilled." I nodded slowly. "That's honest. What were you actually unhappy about?" She looked down. "My work. I felt like I wasn't doing anything meaningful, just coasting while everyone else built careers. Instead of facing that, I made our marriage the villain. Dr. Sterling helped with that, made money off my insecurity. She didn't help, only padded her bank account. For the first time in weeks, something softened inside me. Not enough to change course, but enough to see she might be learning something real. Here's the thing, Rebecca. I believe you're sorry. But being sorry because something's hard isn't the same as understanding why it was wrong. What's the difference? If I make this easy again, what happens the next time life gets hard? The next time you're bored or frustrated? Will you find another coach blaming me? She didn't answer right away. Finally, I want to say no, but I don't know. At least that was honest. I stood. Keep paying your rent. Keep working. Keep figuring out who you are without someone subsidizing your self-discovery. When you can answer that question with certainty, we'll talk again. How long? As long as it takes. I walked away, leaving her with the check and the understanding that freedom wasn't a gift I could give. It was a lesson she had to learn. About 6 weeks into the freedom framework, something shifted. I came home one Tuesday evening to find Rebecca in the kitchen. Not just reheating a ready meal or assembling one of those fancy meal kits she used to Instagram about, but actually cooking. The kitchen smelled of garlic and fresh herbs, and she was focused, humming softly as she stirred a pan. Her hair was pulled back into a loose bun, strands escaping to frame her face, which was flushed with concentration. She wore a simple white blouse, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, and a pair of well-worn jeans that hugged her hips just right. "Smells good," I said, leaning against the doorway. She looked up, startled but not defensive. "I'm making extra if you want some. Cooking in bulk is cheaper." "Sure, I'd appreciate that." She nodded and went back to the pan, the faint shimmer of sweat on her brow making her look both vulnerable and alive. That was the first exchange between us in months without drama, tears, or accusations. Just 2 people sharing a kitchen. Later, after we'd eaten separately at different times, still respecting the boundaries of our separate lives, she knocked on my office door. "Can I show you something?" she asked. "Of course." She handed me her phone, the screen displaying a job listing. Marketing coordinator for a healthcare company. Full-time with benefits, paying nearly double what her consulting gigs had brought in. "I'm applying," she said quietly. "I wanted you to know." "That's great. Good fit." "I think so. Not glamorous, but stable. Real income, real career path. The kind of thing I should have been doing instead of pretending my part-time wellness consulting was enough." "Why tell me?" "Because I want you to know I'm serious about changing. Not just apologizing or feeling sorry for myself, but actually doing the work." I studied her face. She looked tired but clearer somehow, like someone who'd been lost and was finally finding her way. "I hope you get it," I said. "Thanks," she replied, turning to leave, but then stopped. "I've been thinking about what you said, about learning what I need to learn before we could really talk. And I think I'm starting to understand. Being in a partnership isn't bondage, but being an unequal partner, not contributing, taking someone for granted, that's what creates bondage for the other person." She hesitated. "I was making you carry everything while complaining the weight was unfair." I leaned back in my chair. "That's a significant realization." "I know it doesn't fix anything," she admitted. "And I'm not expecting you to forgive me just because I finally figured out what everyone else already knew. But you wanted me to know you're getting it. Slowly, but you're getting it." "Yeah," she said softly. "Keep getting it. Keep doing the work. We'll see where things stand when you're not just surviving, but thriving on your own." She nodded, then quietly closed the door behind her. Over the next month, I watched her transform. She landed the job and started the following week. She budgeted carefully, cooked most meals at home, and swapped expensive wellness retreats for free local events. Her social media posts about authenticity and liberation dried up. She just lived quietly and competently. One Saturday morning, I found her cleaning the kitchen after making breakfast. Not because it was required, not because anyone asked, but because she was living there and it needed doing. Her hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders in soft waves, and her shirt was a little rumpled, sleeves rolled halfway up. She moved with a steady grace I hadn't seen in ages. "You don't have to do that, you know," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She looked up, surprised. "I know, but I made the mess. Takes 5 minutes." Just seemed like the right thing to do. It was such a small moment, but it felt huge. She wasn't performing liberation or bondage. She was just being a functional adult sharing space with another person. She poured 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. We stood there, drinking quietly. No drama, no manifestos, just 2 people existing in the same room without friction. "This is nice," she said, voice low. "It is." We developed a routine, not romantic but functional. We shared meals occasionally, split chores without negotiation, and coexisted without constant tension. I went to my woodworking class. She took up running. We had our own rhythms and our own growth. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to miss her. Not the woman who'd called our marriage bondage, not the woman who took everything for granted, but the woman she was becoming. Self-sufficient, thoughtful, genuinely humble in a way she never had been before. My brother Mark noticed during one of our lunches. "You're talking about her differently," he said. "What do you mean? 3 months ago, you talked about her like she was a problem to solve. Now you talk about her like she's someone you're interested in. What changed?" I thought about it. She changed. She stopped performing bondage or liberation and started just being herself. The real her, not the Instagram version. "So what are you going to do?" "Nothing yet. She needs to finish becoming whoever she's becoming. And I need to be sure this isn't just a phase until the next coach comes along." Mark laughed. "Fair." But I was watching her more carefully now, how she handled stress without blame, made decisions without needing validation, and existed as a whole person instead of an identity in performance. About 3 months after the Freedom Framework began, Rebecca knocked on my door again. "Can we talk?" she asked, sitting down across from me. There was a calmness to her I hadn't seen in a long time. Her blouse was crisp and tucked into tailored trousers, her hair neatly pulled back, strands framing a face that looked healthier, more confident, less frantic. "I've been thinking about what you said about learning what I need to learn before we could really talk," she began. And I think I've learned it. Not perfectly, and I'm sure I'll keep learning. But I understand now what partnership actually means. She paused, searching for the right words. Not one person carrying everything while the other complains. Not keeping score or assigning blame. Just two people making each other's lives better instead of harder. That's what you've learned? That and a lot more, she said, voice steady. I've learned that I'm actually capable of taking care of myself. That independence isn't something to fear, but it's also not better than partnership just because it's harder. She looked me in the eye. I've learned that external validation is expensive and empty. That real growth is uncomfortable and slow. She took a slow breath. Most importantly, I've learned that I had something precious and I threw it away because someone told me it was a prison. Her eyes glistened. I'm sorry. Not because independence is hard, but because I hurt someone who loved me and didn't deserve it. I sat with that, letting the words settle. What are you asking for? A chance to be your actual partner. Not your dependent, not your critic, but your partner. Someone who contributes equally and appreciates what you bring to our life together. She swallowed. And if life gets hard again, if you get bored or frustrated or unhappy, then I deal with it like an adult. I talk to you instead of about you. I work on my actual problems instead of making you the problem. I watched her closely, searching for any sign of manipulation or self-pity. All I saw was someone who'd been through something difficult and come out better. The framework stays in place for now, I said finally. You keep your job, maintain your independence, prove that this isn't just about escaping consequences. Her face fell, but she nodded. I understand, she said softly. We can start rebuilding slowly. Dating, maybe remembering why we chose each other in the first place. See if there's something worth saving. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but a small smile played on her lips. I'd like that, she whispered. No promises, no guarantees. Just the possibility of partnership with someone who's earned the right to be my partner. She stood, hesitated, then reached out her hand. I took it. For the first time in months, the touch felt right. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Prove to me that you mean it. And over the next 3 months, she did. She kept her job, got promoted, managed her finances responsibly, and started voluntarily contributing to our shared expenses. She stopped preaching about authenticity and started living it. Being a responsible, contributing adult instead of a revolutionary fighting imaginary oppression. We began having dinner together most nights, planning weekend activities, slowly rebuilding the intimacy that had been shattered by her liberation crusade. One evening, she came home with groceries and started unpacking them into our fridge without asking or announcing her contribution. I got that coffee you like, she said casually, placing the box in the cupboard. Such a small gesture, but it meant she was paying attention, thinking of someone besides herself. Contributing without keeping score. Thank you, I said. She smiled. Partners notice these things. 6 months after I put the freedom framework into place, Rebecca and I sat down together to draft a new agreement. Not the freedom framework, that was a temporary measure, but a partnership agreement. Equal contributions, equal decision-making, equal respect. The master bedroom became ours again. The space we'd both claimed but hadn't truly shared for months. Our separate finances merged back into joint accounts with full transparency. The independence we'd both developed became the foundation for genuine interdependence. One evening, while we were tidying up after dinner, she paused and looked at me with a thoughtful expression. What? I asked. I was just thinking about that Instagram post, the one where I said marriage was bondage. I raised an eyebrow. What about it? I deleted it months ago, but I still think about it sometimes. How confident I was that I was right, how certain I needed liberation. And now I know real freedom isn't freedom from commitment. It's freedom to choose your commitments wisely and honor them fully. She smiled softly. Turns out liberation was just expensive loneliness. Partnership is the actual prize, I said, pulling her close. Expensive lesson, she murmured. The most expensive I've ever learned, but worth every penny if it means I get to keep you. You're not keeping me. We're keeping each other. Even better. Later that night, I found myself thinking about Dr. Miranda Sterling and her authenticity coaching empire. About how many women she was probably telling right now that their marriages were bondage. How many relationships she was profiting from destroying. But I also thought about Rebecca's transformation. How she'd had to learn through experience what no argument could teach her. How letting her be free had been the only way to help her understand what she was giving up. The freedom framework had saved our marriage by nearly ending it. By taking her stated desires seriously instead of dismissing them. By showing her the reality of liberation instead of just talking about the theory. Sometimes, the best way to love someone is to let them learn the hard way. To give them exactly what they ask for and trust they can learn from the consequences. Rebecca had called our marriage bondage. I set her free. And in the end, she chose to come back. Not because she had to, but because she finally understood what she'd had all along. Freedom, it turned out, was just the long way home. But as I locked up the house that night, my phone buzzed with a new notification. A message from an unknown number. The text read, "Not everyone wants to be set free. Some prefer the chains. Watch closely, David." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Who was watching? And what game was really being played? The message lingered on my phone screen, its words gnawing at my thoughts long after the notification disappeared. Not everyone wants to be set free. Some prefer the chains. Watch closely, David. Who was this? A prank? A warning? Or something more sinister? The next morning, the house felt colder, despite the soft light pouring through the curtains. Rebecca was already up, dressed in a sleek navy blazer and pencil skirt. Her hair pulled back in a tight bun that accentuated the delicate curve of her neck. She was reviewing documents at the kitchen table, the serious woman I'd come to respect, but a flicker of tension crossed her usually calm face. Cleared my throat. Morning. Got an odd message last night. I showed her the screen. She frowned, biting her lip. Sounds like a threat. Maybe from someone connected to that coach, Sterling. She's not exactly known for playing fair. I nodded. I've been thinking about how many lives she's tangled up in this authenticity web. Seems like there's more at stake than just our marriage. Rebecca's emerald eyes met mine, sharp and steady. Well, if it's a game, I'm done being a pawn. For the first time in weeks, a sly smile tugged at her lips. Besides, you always did have a knack for chess, not checkers. I laughed, the sound easing the tension. You're lucky I'm more logical than vengeful. We agreed to keep the message between us for now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Days passed and life returned to a fragile normalcy. Rebecca thrived in her new role, balancing work and home with a quiet determination. Yet, subtle changes rippled beneath the surface. A misplaced file here, a deleted email there. Small things that made me question if we were truly safe. One evening, as I sifted through the mail, I found an unmarked envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, Rebecca caught off guard, laughing with Miranda Sterling in an upscale cafe. The caption scrawled in ink read, "Beware the true cost of freedom." I felt the weight of the words settle like a stone in my stomach. Rebecca entered the room, catching my expression. "What is it?" I handed her the photo. Her smile faded, replaced by a steely resolve. "Looks like the past isn't done with us yet," she whispered. That night, sleep evaded me. I lay awake, haunted by questions. What had Miranda Sterling really wanted? Was Rebecca's liberation just the beginning of something darker? The freedom I'd fought to give her now felt like a double-edged sword. And as dawn broke, I realized that our journey was far from over. The real challenge was just beginning. The following morning, the house was shrouded in a tense silence that neither Rebecca nor I dared to break. She sat at the kitchen table, fingers drumming lightly on the worn oak surface, her eyes fixed on the photograph from the previous night. The emerald glint in her gaze was sharper now, steeled by a determination I hadn't seen since before all this began. "I never told you everything about Miranda," she said quietly, finally breaking the silence. "She's not just a coach. There's a whole network behind her. Women who call themselves liberators, but it's more like a cult. I leaned forward, the weight of her words sinking in. A cult? Like what? Mind control and secret handshakes. She gave a bitter laugh. Something like that. They feed off women's discontent, promising freedom but demanding loyalty and money in return. I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. So when she told you to trust the universe and pay up, it wasn't just coaching. It was a racket. Rebecca nodded slowly. Exactly. And the more I pushed back, the more they tightened the screws. I felt a chill. Did you ever consider walking away completely? Her eyes flickered with pain. I wanted to, but they made it clear that leaving meant losing everything. Clients, friends, even family. For the first time, I saw the full scope of the battle she'd been fighting. It wasn't just about our marriage or her search for authenticity. It was a web woven far beyond us. Determined to protect what we had left, I decided to dig deeper. I spent the next few days researching Miranda Sterling and her so-called liberators. Online forums, obscure websites, and gossip columns painted a picture of a charismatic leader with a trail of broken relationships and drained bank accounts. One evening, I confronted Rebecca with what I'd found. This isn't just about freedom anymore. It's about control. She sighed, relief mingling with exhaustion. I know, but I'm done being a victim. If we want to protect our marriage and ourselves, we have to expose them. We began planning cautiously. Rebecca started documenting every interaction, every coaching session, every financial transaction. I reached out to a friend who was a journalist, someone with a nose for stories about scams and cults. As we worked together, a new sense of partnership emerged. Stronger, more resilient. We weren't just surviving, we were fighting back. But the deeper we dug, the more dangerous it became. One night, as I left the office late, I noticed a shadow lingering outside our home. A car idled nearby, its driver watching. I called Rebecca immediately. We're not alone. Her voice was steady but urgent. Lock the doors. Don't answer if they knock. That night, as the rain tapped against the windows, I realized that the true price of freedom might be far higher than either of us had imagined. And the question hung in the air. Could love survive when the very forces promising liberation sought to tear it apart? The nights that followed were tense and restless. Every creak of the house, every flicker of shadow outside the window, made my heart race. Rebecca and I moved with a new caution, our eyes constantly scanning, our phones always close. The quiet partnership we'd rebuilt was now tempered by a shared vigilance. One evening, as we sat side by side in the living room, the glow from the fire casting flickering shadows across Rebecca's delicate features, she turned to me with a question that made the blood drain from my face. David, what if this isn't just about Miranda or her network? What if someone else is pulling the strings? I swallowed hard. You mean someone who benefits from all this chaos? Someone who wants to keep us divided and distracted? She nodded. Exactly. Maybe I was just a pawn in a much bigger game. The idea was terrifying. I felt like we'd stepped into a labyrinth with no clear exit. Determined to find answers, I agreed to meet with the journalist friend I'd contacted. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in a small town outside London, somewhere discreet. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, slid a thick folder across the table as soon as I sat down. This is just the tip of the iceberg, Claire said. Miranda Sterling's coaching empire is connected to several other groups, businesses, charities, even political organizations, all weaving a web of influence under the guise of empowerment. I flipped through documents, emails, financial records. The scale was staggering. Why target your marriage? I asked. Because marriages like yours are microcosms of society, Claire explained. If they can break down partnerships, they can reshape social structures. Control the individual, control the collective. I felt a cold fury rise inside me. This wasn't just about Rebecca and me anymore. It was about fighting a system designed to exploit vulnerability. Back at home, I shared everything with Rebecca. She listened, her eyes fierce with resolve. We have to be smarter than they are, she said. No more secrets. No more silence. Together, we began documenting everything. Every message, every interaction, every suspicious phone call. We installed security cameras, changed passwords, tightened our digital lives. But the closer we got to the truth, the more aggressive the forces became. One night, the power went out. I found a note slipped under the door. Stop digging, or lose everything. Fear mingled with determination. We weren't just fighting for our marriage now. We were fighting for our lives. And in the shadows, someone was watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. The question remained, who would break first? The game was far from over. Weeks later, the tension in our home was palpable, like a tightrope stretched thin, ready to snap. Every glance, every whispered conversation felt weighted with unspoken threats. But Rebecca and I had learned something vital: strength in unity. One rainy evening, as the wind howled outside, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire, the journalist. Meet me. New evidence.
Urgent.
Midnight. Old mill on the outskirts. I glanced at Rebecca. Her eyes met mine, steady and unwavering. We do this together, she said. At midnight, the old mill loomed like a forgotten relic, shadows swallowing its broken windows. Claire was waiting, clutching a folder thick with documents, recordings, names. They're planning a summit, she whispered. An event where Miranda's network will meet powerful allies. Politicians, business moguls, influencers. All pushing an agenda under the guise of liberation. Rebecca's jaw tightened. We have to expose them. Suddenly, headlights swept across the mill's cracked walls. A sleek black car pulled up, doors opening silently. Figures emerged, well-dressed, confident, dangerous. Claire hissed, "We're not alone." Heart pounding, I grabbed Rebecca's hand. Time to run. We darted through the shadows, the night swallowing our footsteps. Somewhere behind us, voices shouted, doors slammed. Breathless, we reached my car and sped into the rainy night, the city lights a distant glow behind us. Safe for now. As we drove, Rebecca squeezed my hand. We've come this far. We won't let them win. I nodded, eyes on the road, mind racing. Freedom wasn't just about breaking chains. It was about fighting for what mattered: truth, love, and the courage to face the shadows together. But in the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights followed, silent, relentless. And the game was only just beginning.